There's a lot of stepping stones that us people looking at the outside of these entrepreneurs don't really realize until you really dig deep into their journey and story, that you can see that they had a lot of steps that led to where they are today. So you're not just blurting out your opinion, and not even caring about theirs, because then you're just shouting back and forth, blurting your own opinions and not having an open mind to learn. But instead you should ask questions, and this can actually turn an argument into a discussion, because asking the right questions will help you to avoid failure and learn something that maybe could save you a lot of time. And a great tip for people trying to sell a product is welcome to Innovation Illuminated, a podcast where guest entrepreneurs and experts in their field of business share their experiences and knowledge learned through their journey in the business world. I'm your host, Entrepreneurial, and similar to these guests, I'm also an entrepreneur. Today is going to serve as a recap episode, so I'm going to talk about what has went on with guests from mid-February through March, some main takeaways that I've learned, other experiences that they shared with me, and I broke it down into, I think I'm going to talk about 3 main topics throughout the episode that were kind of similar between each guest. So the first topic we're going to talk about is that this month, every guest kind of had an abundance of their success come through opportunities. So let's start with Bill Bachman. In his episode, he talked about he met this person, or actually had them do a lecture at his college, and the person did a lecture on marketing, and he was very interested and liked the lecture. The next day, he was out on the ski hill, and he saw that person that did the lecture, and Bill just decided to go ski with him. And after skiing with him for a day, having a great time on the ski hill, they talked about what the guy does for a living, his experiences, kind of what I do on the podcast where I talk with guests. That's kind of what Bill did with this guy. And this guy opened up and kind of gave Bill this opportunity to come work at the agency after college. So this guy kind of introduced Bill to the brand development industry on a ski hill. Talk about a weird opportunity that just came out to be that you met somebody on a ski hill and then started talking, and then eventually got a job with them and learned a bunch through the way with this experience. So it's kind of funny that everything with Bill's career kind of started with that in the brand development agency. And from there, Bill worked for that guy. Then he went and worked for a different agency. And then after that, he just decided to start his own. So it kind of sparked from that initial experience of meeting the guy on the ski hill, which is super interesting, and then getting a job with him. And you wouldn't think that initially that would have led to something, just talking to him on the ski hill. But Bill took that initiative and met the guy, talked with him, and learned and asked him good questions to further Bill's knowledge and also get him an opportunity, which actually happened, where he got an opportunity to work for him. For Elsie, the mayor of Podcast Town, which I had on as a guest a couple weeks ago, he was enthralled by business owners and was sick of doing a bunch of side jobs. He said that he scrubbed boats for a living at one point, worked at fast food restaurants, and was sick of having those jobs. And he was really interested in getting in the entrepreneurship and business owning sector of business. So he started a podcast much like I did, where he sat down and he started out by talking to his barber about how the barber started the business. Then he just talked to a real estate agent, his daughter's dance teacher, and eventually talked to a bunch of very successful entrepreneurs. He even talked to the guy that invented the rainbow loom. If you remember that, it's like where you used to make bracelets with wrist or with rubber bands where you'd weave them together kind of thing. He talked to the guy that created that, which is pretty cool. But anyways, he started this podcast and talked with business owners. And one episode, he asked the guy, "What do you think I would be good at?" And the guest told Elsie, "Well, why don't you just start a business where you'd help other people start podcasts? Because you did it. You have all the equipment. Why don't you help others do it? Because they don't have that skill. And you're very skilled at doing podcasts." And that was something that never occurred to Elsie, that he had that opportunity to start the business. But had he not asked that question to that guy, he would have never been in the business he is today, because he would have never thought of it. So it's all about the questions that you ask. And even though these opportunities may seem like they fell onto their plate, like for Elsie, may seem like it fell onto his plate that he was just going to start a podcasting business where he helps people start podcasts, it really wasn't that way, because he took the initiative to start the podcast, and there was a bunch of things that led in a row in order to get him to that place where he had the opportunity to ask somebody a question like, what kind of business should I start? And they gave him that good advice. So there's a lot of stepping stones that us people looking at the outside of these entrepreneurs don't really realize until you really dig deep into their journey and story, that you can see that they had a lot of steps that led to where they are today and opportunities that they took initiative on that helped them to where they are today. Another great example of this is Gullen Smith, the owner of G's Clippers. He started cutting hair at the age of 12 and he was one of 6 boys. So his dad cut all their hair because obviously it's going to be expensive to take 6 boys to the barbershop pretty often. And he wasn't satisfied with the way his dad cut his hair. So G got to hold in the Clippers and cut his brother's hair, and along with a lot of the kids in the neighborhood. When people started to ditch their barbershops and come to G for a haircut, he kind of realized that he had a talent for cutting hair, and all this practice that he had on his brothers and people in the neighborhood was paying off, and that he was becoming a good barber. So he went to school for it and eventually got a job at a small barbershop. After that owner shut down the barbershop, G decided that he wanted to go on his own and start his own shop. And he was super persistent, and he pursued that opportunity to start the barbershop. So he opened a shop with a couple barber chairs and eventually wanted to grow. So then he got a second shop. So he had 2 shops going at once. And he wanted just one location where everybody could kind of be at, so he wouldn't have to worry about 2 shops. So he purchased a building downtown Milwaukee now that houses 30 plus barbers operating in it. And when here's taking it back to like the beginning of where you don't know what went on through their journey. When G started cutting hair when he was 12 years old, he didn't know that it was going to be a huge barber shop. He didn't know that he was going to grow into 30 plus barbers and be very successful. He didn't know any of that stuff. So he didn't really have that planned out to get there. It kind of just fell into his plate, like I'm saying again. But that's not how it actually was. He took a lot of steps and kept being persistent and pursuing that to where he got today. And he's cut a lot of famous celebrities' hair, which is super interesting because you would never dream of that as a kid. You dream of it, but you wouldn't think it ever happened. Like he's cut the hair for Shaquille O'Neal, Ray Allen, Tyler Hero, Reggie Miller, Jason Kidd, and many more NBA ball players, which is super cool. But back to the topic of getting into the opportunity with G, is that it's constantly changing the landscape of the barbershop through what people need. And through his journey, he's changed into just having the barbershop, and now he's actually branching it out and adapting into having the barbershop with a wellness clinic inside it, which is called G's MKE Wellness Clinic. So this is where people can go to get educated and have standard health tests done, which is so cool because he's branching out beyond the walls of the barbershop in that he's just not doing haircuts. He's really getting involved with the community and building that trust and that reputation for being not only a good barber, but also a place where the whole community can come together and have a common ground for well-being and making everybody better. And this is another example of where G didn't think of this, nor did he really have the resources to do the G's MKE Wellness Clinic in years past or in the first couple of years that he was starting a barbershop. He would have never thought to think that he'd have a wellness clinic in his barbershop that people could come to get educated. And maybe that education even saves somebody's life because they realize that they have high blood sugar or their glucose is low and all these other tests that they can do at this clinic that he would have never really realized that he was able to do that in years prior. But through the growth and his eye-opening experiences and keeping an eye out for opportunities, he's been able to meet the right people, create the right relationships, and build the right community to make this all possible and to be such a great community-focused man. I think that's a big skill to have as an entrepreneur, is that somebody that is constantly up for change and able to adapt to new trends. And Paul Decker says it best in episode 19 when he says that you can either take it all in and dwell on it, or you can go, all right, what do we have to do? I'm tying this into being able to adapt and change as an entrepreneur, because there's many times that a challenge arises, and are you going to be the person that's going to lay down and not solve the problem? Or are you going to be the person that takes initiative and says, okay, what needs to be done in order to solve this problem? I could go on and on about the influence that Paul has on this channel and my mindset after the episode, because there's so many takeaways from this episode. I mean, I think I have 10 plus short videos that I put on the II podcast clips channel that are just short little clips, because the original podcast is 2.5 hours. So it's quite a lengthy one, but super interesting. And we talk about so many great topics, and it's wisdom packed, and you should really go listen to it because it's a really good podcast. But anyways, to sum up that episode, I'd say one of the main takeaways that I took away from Paul was that he has an understanding of people's perspective. And it's very interesting to hear that he says it's really important that you know the person's perspective that you're talking to. And that comes up when I asked him, what is the difference between a discussion and an argument? Because I find that a lot of times nowadays, everybody just gets into arguments about politics, religion, everything. It's just an argument. You just blurt out your own opinions and don't take anybody else into consideration because you think that you know best. And it's just so one-sided right now that everybody's in arguments. So I asked him, what's the difference between a discussion and an argument? And his response was that an argument is where you're shouting your opinions at somebody and you're not taking into consideration where somebody else is coming from. So on the other hand, a discussion will be where you ask questions to better understand where the person is coming from. So you're not just blurting out your opinion, and not even caring about theirs, because then you're just shouting back and forth, blurting your own opinions and not having an open mind to learn. But instead, you should ask questions, and this can actually turn an argument into a discussion if you just start asking questions and learn where they're coming from to maybe help better understand where they're coming from, and both people can help each other learn. And this can actually, like I said, turn an argument into a discussion, because it'll de-escalate the situation and won't be as much shouting and yelling because you're digging deeper into understanding where that person is coming from. The next topic I want to cover is failure. Even with research, because researching a business is very important when you're first starting, even with research, a lot of companies fail or have challenges that arise. And a famous Vince Lombardi quote is, "It's not how you fall down, it's how you get back up." And Paul gives a good comparison on this topic to leaders who helped America become a union, because they didn't just say, okay, we have everything written, everything's done, we're just going to sit back and not take charge and not continue to grow. And they weren't arrogant enough to do that, because they continued to grow. And when something failed or something needed to change, they continued to push forward and asked people anywhere on the ladder, whether they were somebody that had a normal job or they were high up in the union, they asked them for advice and would take that advice. It's very important as a leader that you be transparent and ask for advice, because it doesn't matter who the person is, they still have a voice and could be seeing something that you're not really seeing that could really help the union in this case, or the business, a lot of different things. And Elsie also said this when I asked him what advice he'd have for young entrepreneurs. He said that you should learn from your failures, fail often, fail fast, and fail forward, because it is what you learn from your experience that really matters. To maybe mitigate this chance of failure and to continue learning, Paul Decker says that the only thing that he wishes he could have done in past situations, he doesn't have any regret. I did ask him that. But he says that he wishes that in past situations that to save more time, to learn more, and to mitigate failure will be just to ask more questions. Because asking the right questions will help you to avoid failure and learn something that maybe could save you a lot of time. In hindsight, it's easy to think of these questions because we come to find out what we need to know in order to succeed. But it's important to take a step back in situations and think, what could help me save time if I just asked it right now instead of waiting until later to find out? Because why not just ask it now? And it could lead to another question from that answer that the person gives you. This month, I also got to talk to two up and coming entrepreneurs, which are Trey Benz and Hayden Pauls. And from Trey, I learned that his business, he took a lot of risks financially and with employees right out of the gate. And that's the way that his company has succeeded in the first year of business, is that he took big risks and just went all in. He dove in the deep end. And that's what it worked for his business. It might not work for a lot of businesses because you don't have a plan right away and you're just jumping way in the deep end and putting a lot of money into it. And it might not run smooth, but that's how his worked. And then on the other hand, Hayden Pauls started an online sneaker resale business, and he hasn't taken a big risk with financially much at all besides buying inventory and reselling it. That's obviously a risk. But he has done no paid advertising or lead generation or anything for the business. It's all been organic, which is super cool. And Hayden showed me that business authenticity is a great way to sell a product. Him and his co-owner girlfriend, Sydney, have seen great success in doing live streams where customers can ask them questions and see the product firsthand. And what's kind of cool too, what they incorporated is if you order, that they'll actually package your order on the TikTok live or YouTube live, whatever they're live on, they'll package the order in front of you so you can see your shoes getting boxed up, which is kind of just a cool little touch that makes people feel like they know them and have like a personal relationship with these people. And in a world where everybody's out to get you, it's nice to see that like somebody's doing live streams and videos showing off the actual product and answering questions immediately. Funny enough, I actually asked my girlfriend and her roommate if they knew who Hayden was, because they're pretty famous. I think they have like 200,000 followers on TikTok for the shoe resale account. And she said that no way, like her and her roommate feel like they know them personally. And they've never met them in real life, but they feel like they know them because of their TikTok lives and other videos are so authentic and genuine that people feel like they have a relationship with them. And I think that's super helpful, and a great tip for people trying to sell a product is that you have to be authentic and come off as trustworthy and honest to the end consumer, because they're not going to buy from you if they don't feel 100% sure that you're trying to sell them the best product. They want to know that you're telling them the truth and that you feel 100% confident in the product that you're selling. The final topic I want to cover in this recap episode is training employees. In episode 15 and 18, we talk about this topic of training employees and how difficult it is, and it's just a different challenge in business in order to scale the business. Bill Bachman actually said that his biggest roadblock and challenge since starting the business has been finding quality employees. As a business owner, we often want to shape employees into a mini version of us, which is not the right thing to do, but we often think that we have to shape them into a mini version of us so that they have the same skills, output, passion, and overall doing the same work quality as we do. When we bring in employees from all different backgrounds with different experiences attached to them, and it's not right to think that we could shape them into ourselves, because we're a different person, different individual with a different view. As the business owner, you have the vision of where you want the company to go, and you need to make sure that you facilitate that and not make everybody the visionary that you are, but to give them purpose and respect them and really pick out what makes them good and good traits that they have in order to make them excel in their job. So G actually told me in episode 18 that some employees in his barbershop didn't know that they had like a specific skill. Like some people, he said, were really good at fade haircuts, but they just didn't feel that way and like were about to give up and quit. And he's like, you need to know that you're really good at this. And it's almost like the barber was blind to knowing that they were good at something. So as the boss, you really need to identify what people are good at and reinforce it and tell them that they're doing great and that they should be doing this better, and to respect them and make them feel purpose in their work, because you should always be transparent and learn from them and take suggestions from them. Because if you're transparent and respect them, and they respect you, they're going to give you the honest feedback that you really want. That's going to help grow and make the business better overall. That was a brief summary of what went on in the past month on the podcast. And as always, please leave a comment on YouTube and who you'd like me to interview and what you're curious to learn from them. I will be reading all the comments. And please subscribe to us on Spotify and YouTube, as that's a great way to support the podcast. Thanks for tuning in to Innovation Illuminated.